Good evening, peoples. I'm Pastor Lane, and this here is Ginger Snap, my sidekick. So welcome back to our living room for our new series on the 12-ish apostles, depending on who you read or who you count. So I'm hoping that the video is going. I'm getting a whole spinning thing, but we're going to start anyway. So last week we started with Andrew because we are going alphabetically because that makes sense to my brain. So tonight we have Bartholomew, which unlike last week's Andrew is actually a Hebrew name, which means Bartholomew, or a son of Ptolemy, basically, which isn't exactly a name so much as who the guy's father is, which is interesting. So anyway, Bartholomew appears in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but not John. So there is a theory that John, the author of the Gospel of John, changed the name of Bartholomew to Nathaniel because there's a Nathaniel in the Gospel of John, but not a Bartholomew. But most scholars today think that they're separate figures because it's kind of a really grasping theory. So in the three Gospels where he is named, he's always mentioned with Philip, so it's Philip and Bartholomew, go do things. But in John, we read about Philip and Nathaniel, and that's like literally the only reason why some people think that Bartholomew and Nathaniel are the same person. Although to be fair, if Bartholomew is just son of this one guy, then there's no reason why his first name couldn't be Nathaniel. Anyway, I just think that's an interesting little scholarly aside. So it's been lost, long since lost at this point, but at one point there was an apocryphal Gospel of Bartholomew that was mentioned by St. Jerome in the 4th century. We have no idea what was in it. That's just a little fun fact. There's so many books that we've lost over the centuries. So he is the patron saint of Armenia. As far as I could tell, that's the only country of which he is the patron saint, unlike Andrew, who is much more popular, even represented on the flag of the UK. So according to legend, Bartholomew traveled to India with a copy of Matthew's Gospel, and allegedly he also traveled to Ethiopia, Armenia, Persia, Egypt, and modern-day Iraq, Iran, and Turkey. So at about this point, I would usually pull up a Bible and be like, hey, here's a verse about Bartholomew. Except that literally any verse about Bartholomew is Philip and Bartholomew followed Jesus. Bartholomew doesn't do anything in the Bible except get named, which is really interesting because he is one of Jesus's, 12 main best friends. And you would think that, if 3 of the gospel writers think he's important enough to name at multiple points in their narrative, that he should be important enough to, tell us what he did, or why he followed, or what Jesus thought about him. Well, I mean, I guess the fact that Jesus thought him important enough to be part of his inner circle is kind of a big deal, but we don't actually know anything about Bartholomew in the text, which is really interesting, because one of Jesus's best friends, you'd think we would know more about him. So his feast day is August 24th. So here's where we get fun. So I think these are all in Christian legends, obviously not in the Bible, because Bartholomew doesn't really do anything in the Bible. So in some stories, he dies by being beheaded or thrown into the sea to drown, or crucified upside down. There's an interesting theme that we'll be coming across throughout the apostle stories of people being crucified, but not exactly in the way that Jesus was. So Andrew last week being, as an X and not as a traditional cross shape. But the most popular version of his death has him flayed of his skin. So let that sink in for a moment. Flayed of his skin. So the story goes that he converted the king of Armenia to Christianity, but the king's brother was like, excuse you? No. I'm gonna have you tortured and executed now because I don't appreciate you, converting my brother. And I feel like the king maybe should have stepped in and prevented this, but maybe, he didn't like know about it. I don't know. And so like the legend gives us like the names of these characters, except that in all of Armenian history, there is no record of a king by that name. Anyway, it's all legendary. There's a theory this actually happened in India, which, again, neither here nor there. There's no way to prove any of this. Yeah, like the king's brother has Bartholomew tortured and executed by being flayed alive. So we've been talking a little bit about relics over the past few weeks, which is either literally a piece of a saint that has been preserved or something that they owned or worked with or blessed. So supposedly, and there's not really a way to, prove this either way, there is a large piece of skin and many bones that are kept in the Basilica San Bartolomeo in Benevento, Italy. The story goes they like washed on shore at some point. Anyway. So some relics from there were given in the 10th century to the Roman church of San Bartolomeo all'Isola, which is St. Bartholomew on the island. Haven't used my Italian in a while, it's probably kind of rusty. So then this church of St. Bartholomew on the island was built on the site of an ancient temple to Asclepius, who is the Greek god of medicine. And I mention this because it's really interesting that because this church of St. Bartholomew on the island was built on top of what used to be a temple to the Greek god of medicine, St. Bartholomew has an association with medicine and hospitals, which is a neat connection. Sometimes I do not understand the jump between a saint and like why they're the patron of something random, but like that one's pretty direct. So speaking of St. Bartholomew and hospitals, there's this place called St. Bartholomew's Hospital, more commonly known as Bart's, in London, and it was founded in 1123. 900 years ago, and it's still functioning as a hospital 900 years later, which is so cool. London is awesome. I miss London and England generally. Anyway, Anglophile. So it's still running as a hospital. Now it's a teaching hospital, has been for 200 or 300 years. And so fun fact. If any of you are fans of Sherlock Holmes, canonically in Arthur Conan Doyle's A Study in Scarlet, St. Bartholomew's Hospital is where Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson meet for the first time. And also canonically, it's where Dr. Watson studied, because it was, at the time, and still is, a teaching hospital. So that's fun fact that you probably weren't expecting Sherlock Holmes in this Bible study, but there you go. So in art, he is often shown with a beard and curly hair, because that is how he's described in the Golden Legend, which is where we get a lot of saint legends from. So sometimes he's shown with a book, which is why I'm wearing my book earrings today, by the way. Sometimes he's standing on top of a monster, because there's another story where he like defeated a monster, or like it's on a chain, or I was a bit confused by that particular story. But most distinctively, if someone in art has been flayed of his skin, or has skin literally draped over his arm, that's almost certainly going to be St. Bartholomew. And sometimes the figure might be holding a knife, or holding a knife and holding his skin, which is yeah. So, speaking of art, and I should probably, these are not the most friendly of art. Anyway, so here is a piece from Michelangelo's The Last Judgment from the Sistine Chapel. So this here is St. Bartholomew, which apparently is Michelangelo's kind of own face put on the saint, which is interesting, and I'm sure that you could do a pretty in-depth analysis of why he would choose this particular saint, but I'm not an art historian and am not qualified to comment on that. So because it is the Last Judgment and all things are being restored, Bartholomew is like wearing skin but also holding his skin because his skin has been restored to him, and also a six-pack of abs, because why not? Anyway, so that's really cool. These kind of technically got two sets of skin there. because all things are restored. So here is another piece that I've seen in person, St. Bartholomew by Pierre Le Gros the Younger from the Basilica of St. John Lateran in Rome. So here again, he's holding his skin, and you can kind of see a lot of tendons coming up in the carving, because in, of course, the Renaissance era of people being really into anatomy and how the human body works and where bones and muscles and tendons are, St. Bartholomew, quite understandably, is a very popular thing to draw, because that's the perfect excuse to draw all these tendons and muscles and bones sticking out and intimate human body anatomy stuff that you don't usually have a reason to draw in most religious art for obvious reasons. So this one is a bit gnarly. So St. Bartholomew has an intact face to help with the identifying. So you see he's got full beard and curly hair, but he's all red because we're looking at his muscles, and he's not with a draped in fabric. He's draped in his skin. Art of St. Bartholomew is fun. Explaining to my mother why we were seeing this statue of someone who was literally holding his own skin was kind of hilarious, because she hadn't noticed that detail. Anyway, so he is the patron saint against neurological diseases and a couple other afflictions, because again he's associated with medicine and hospitals. So because he was filleted of his skin, he is the patron saint of leather workers, shoemakers, because shoes are often made with leather, butchers, because skinning, bookbinders, also often made with leather. Yeah, so those make sense for him. I'm not clear why he's the patron saint of plasterers and painters, like house painters. One saint thing that I was looking at was like, because of the manner of his death. I was like, how are these things connected? Like I've painted in houses, and I've never had any involvement with people being flamed. Anyway, and he also, and I'm really not clear on this one, is the patron saint of Florentine cheese merchants and Florentine salt merchants, which is very specific. Anyway, so I just think it's really interesting that, canonically, we don't know anything about Bartholomew, except he's, got a Hebrew name, and he hung out with Jesus. And that just leaves so much room for interpretation, and it seems, we should know more, but we don't. And there's so much importance of the number 12 in Christian tradition, because these 12 men that hung out with Jesus, but Bartholomew we don't know anything about. So I just think that's just so cool that we've come up with all of these stories over the year to fill in those gaps, because we want to know more. This guy was important to Jesus, maybe he should be important to us by extension. So anyway, that is St. Bartholomew. Are you going to come up or just sit and stare at me? Because of course you are. So Ginger Snap and I hope to see you on Thursday at our weekly fellowship Zoom, which is one of her favorite times of the week, because I sit here and pet her, and she can be cute for the camera, which is one of her favorite activities, although I only just fed her right before the live stream, so she had to go off and eat some more food. That's on me. Well, okay then. And of course, on Sunday, we'll be gathering in person at 10 in the sanctuary. If you're joining us online, the live stream will start around 10:15. And then after the service, we will be having our annual congregational meeting in the sanctuary right after worship. So if you are a member, you can come and join and vote on things and discuss. If you're not a member, come and join us anyway. You don't technically get a vote, but we'd still love to see you there. So until next time, good night, peoples.